Hello and welcome back to the Cheltenham Festival 2021 head-to-head series with myself and Dan. How are you doing, Dan? You good?
I'm very well, mate. Thank you. West Ham briefly went into the top four last night, so that was my week made. But more importantly, mate, how are you faring after all the stick you had last week after your highly controversial honeysuckle versus Epitaph talk?
Um, I still believe that Epitaph is going to beat Honeysuckle. I'll go against the
Oh God, here we
masses.
go.
I won't go into too much detail. Happy to take the stick because I'd rather be the one shouting at the end of it than the one who's deleting my comments come March the 16th or whenever it is. I'm still pretty confident Epitaph and happy to take the stick. We've obviously got the racing action right now is minimal. The action we've got coming up, we're not too keen to cover. So we've decided we're going to give you a couple handicap horses for the Cheltenham Festival before our selections. I'll let Dan take it away with his first horse that he's thinks could have a good chance in a handicap.
Yeah, so these are the ones just I think would be worth noting when the entries come out in a week or so's time. Obviously, that's when we can really probably get stuck into them, and then the weights come out a week or so after. But these are ones just to keep an eye on. Not sure if they're going to be entered, but if they are, they're going to be interesting. So the first one is Lieutenant ROCCO, who's on a mark 147 after winning a decent novice chase over 3 miles last time out, having previously only really gone over 2 miles or 2 mile 4 over fences in his previous few starts. And he ran with credit on all those, to be fair. He pulled up in last year's Albert Bartlett, but he was quite inexperienced. He tried to make the running, and he was with Colin Tizard at the time, who had a terrible week. So happy to forgive him that. And now he's with Nick Mitchell. I think he'd be very interesting in an Ultima or even a plate if they fancy dropping him slightly down in trip. But after that win in the novice chase, they might be tempted to go for what was the RSA or is now the Brown Advisory 3 miler. But I think he's also a horse to look out for long term. He's only 6 years old. Maybe he even becomes like a Hennessy horse next year, given his age. I think they think a lot of him. So if he is entered in handicap, he'll be one to take seriously.
I've got one that I think is a bit of a plot job. Nicky Henderson, and obviously to no one's surprise, it's another JP McManus horse that I continue to land on. I don't really know why. I'm not doing this purposely. And this is for the Pertemps, and it's Champagne Platinum. He's not currently qualified to run in the Pertemps. He's got 2 opportunities left. You got Haydock this weekend and Chepstow on the 25th. Looking at the Racing Post, he's actually entered at Haydock this weekend. I remember talking to you last year, Dan, and we thought this might be a handicap plot for Chase for over fences. And he did go off favourite for the Kim Muir, about 5-1. He finished 7th, out the back for a long way, steady headway, got up to the leading pack, and just his run petered out. Now, that was obviously over 3 mile, 2 furlongs. This is over 3 miles and over hurdles. It's a completely different ball game for him. I'm not surprised they've reverted back to hurdles with him. He ran in graded company as a novice hurdler. And I think if you told Nicky he was going to be a 138 rated horse 2 seasons ago, he must already have called you silly. The one reason I'm not actually sticking up as a selection is because he's not qualified. He is a bit ground dependent. I don't think he wants it too heavy. He was pulled out on heavy ground the last day. Now, this is the concern really, is if he doesn't get into the Pertemps, because Haydock's going to be heavy this weekend. And I imagine Chepstow will follow the exact same route. He's about 25. So I've had a little go on it myself. I think if they can get him into this, he's off a low enough weight, and JP does have a good record at the Pertemps, so definitely one to keep an eye on.
Do you think he'd stay 3 miles? I've never thought he'd a stayer, to be honest. Like I can't believe he went off favourite for a Kim Muir. Like I couldn't be happier to have taken him on that day. I thought he'd be pretty, if he could squeeze into maybe a Coral Cup off bottom weight, maybe, but I don't know. He travels quite sweetly, doesn't he?
He does. He went through the Kim Muir quite well, and I think he's just like a year older. It'd be very interesting because he did look to be lacking in pace in that one run he had this year over 2.5. Because he's quite ground dependent, his mark has been preserved because they just kept avoiding the ground that we've had. I did actually have down here that if they do go for the Coral Cup, which is a possibility, Nicky has won that race 4 times since 2010, so he does know what it takes to win with one, and possibly if he doesn't get into Pertemps could be an idea for them.
Fair enough. So mine's like the complete opposite to Champagne Platinum, this next one. So we're going up in age quite drastically to DORAN in the Grand Annual if he's entered. So he's second in it in 2019 off 148. He's managed to go back down to 150 now. It's also a mark he was second to Magic Saint in a handicap in late 2019. And you don't have to go all that far back to when he won the Grade 2 Desert Orchid Chase. So although he hasn't been in great form this season, I think he did shape quite well in the Peterborough Chase over 2.5. Like he was still bang there 2 out, and just he doesn't stay 2.5 miles to my mind, but he was still running a decent race that day. Pulled up last time out. Like he hasn't had a great season, but that's why his mark's been dropping. And he's a horse who generally does perform really well at Cheltenham. And returning horses in Grand Annuals tend to have quite good records, and veterans can win it. The year he was second, Crocco Bay won it. I think it was 13, wasn't he?
He was really old, yeah.
Yeah, so they can turn up in it. You generally have two, either novices or the real veterans. It tends to be a race for either or, really. He still enters the Champion Chase at the minute. He doesn't have a chance in that. He was third in last year's subpar renewal. He's 33-1 at the moment for the Grand Annual. I'd be quite happy to wait until the day, to be honest. I think you could probably get that and maybe even bigger with more places. I mean, if they stick a claimer on him, £5-7 claimer on him, he'll be effectively off a bit lower. I wouldn't be surprised if he has one last big effort in store for him, a track he absolutely loves. So he could probably place at a big price.
How old is he? Did you say that? Sorry, how old he was?
He's 10 now. So he's 10. Not actually as old as you'd probably think.
Yeah, I thought he was older than that. So yeah, no, definitely got a fair chance. I think you tweeted about this horse not that long ago having a good chance, or at least I read that someone did. Yeah, it'd be very interesting. As you say, they might still go for that Champion Chase if the field does cut up, although it looks like it might be a bigger field this year than last year, definitely. The other horse I've got, I really want her to go to the County Hurdle, but I think they're going to avoid it, which is a shame. And that's going to be Eglantine de Soy. She has some really good form at Cheltenham, and I'm all for horses for courses. And she's got form reading 1:02. That win did come in the Mayor's Novice Hurdle when beating Concertista, and she did finish second in a handicap here over 2.5 miles earlier this season. She has some really good form over 2 miles, including a good run, which she finished, I think, 4th in the Ladbrokes Hurdle at Leopardstown. And following that run, they ran in the Coral Cup last year, and she just sort of finished down the field. I'd be very interested if they were to go to the County Hurdle, because I think a strong run 2 miles would really suit her. The only problem is that she's only ever priced up with one firm, and that's Unibet at 40-1. So it doesn't look like that's the plan. 25-1 for the Coral Cup, and that seems a fair enough price. She has been running all right this season, although Paul Nicholls hasn't had the best of luck with these Willie Mullins horses that have moved over, and they keep changing her trip quite a lot. They've run over 3 miles when she got beaten 9 lengths by Roxana. But yeah, I think 2 miles or 2.5 miles around Cheltenham, and she must probably be quite a big price. Could be definitely an each way shot.
Yeah, I mean, Nicholls could do with some luck with those Sullivan horses, can't he? Really, like it's been a mixed bag since they turned over. I think Dolcita ran a decent race the other day, but she's now with Fergal O'Brien after 1 star for Paul Nicholls. So they seem to have gone all over the place, really. I think maybe leaving Willie wasn't the best idea, as it never really turns out to be.
Exactly that, yeah. Brilliant. Before we go any further, I posted a stat on my Twitter page, and as this is a Cheltenham preview video, I think it's going to be worth saying. The horses running at Ascot this weekend, since 2017, only 41 horses have gone from that meeting to Cheltenham, and none of them have won. It's a meeting that we've seen sort of Q Cards gone to Cheltenham from there, Out Dancer went to Ascot from there, and even like Copperhead last year. I think a lot of people get sucked into these horses because they put up some good, big performances, but it's only 4 weeks away from the festival, and it could be worth scratching them as such. There's a couple to note here. You've got the Big Breakaway, who I mean wouldn't have the best of chance in my idea at the RSA anyway, but he's the favourite for, I think it's the Reynoldstown, and he's most probably going to go to Cheltenham following that. And one that does pain me is St Calvados is entered in the Ascot Chase. I'd really hope that he misses that, because the horse that runs wild and fresh. So yeah, just be very careful if backing any horses who run at Ascot this weekend if they do go to Cheltenham. And most probably could say the same for Newbury as well. That's normally run a week earlier, and that's been pushed back. So be careful on those ones.
I'd be surprised if St Calvados runs.
So would I.
He didn't fall at like the second in last time. He fell at the 17th. Like he went for a fair way. I mean, you surely just think keep him fresh, and well, as fresh as you can now for probably the Ryanair. I think, what was the last one? It was a horse last year. Was it Riders on the Storm? Was it beat Surname in the Ascot?
Yeah,
Chase?
I think Surname took a tumble, didn't he?
Quite fancied for the for the Ryanair, and he never really went a yard. So yeah, if he can get really testing on the Ascot card, it's not a good preparation really.
I'll let you take it away with the selections this week.
Oh, thank you very much. So we're back in handicap territory now. I think we're getting to the time where the entries are out next week, but I still just love getting stuck into a handicap, even at this stage. And I'd realised last week that I hadn't actually have any Willie Mullins or JP horses in my selection so far. So I've combined the two. Well, I think I want one this time. So we're going to go with one, and that horse is Janidil for the Coral Cup. Now, I had to get this horse priced up myself for this race, which kind of showed you I was going a bit off piece for this one. You can get 25 to 1 with William Hills, but 16 to 1 non-run no bet is available. And given he's not certain to run here, that's the route I'm going to be taking. So he was fifth in last year's Albert Bartlett. And if you watch that race back, he was held up right at the back. He travelled really, really well. And he was still nearly last when they jumped the second last, but he got squeezed on the bend as he was trying to make his challenge, but he actually did make quite decent headway, and he did well to finish fifth, considering one, he hadn't run anywhere over 3 miles yet. All his runs had come over 2 miles, and also the caliber of the horses in front of him. It would have been an incredible ask for him to close on them, given the substance of the form those guys have produced recently. And I think it's fair to say he was comfortably the 5th best horse in that race. So as I said, he'd only run over 2 miles before that. So he was second to Notebook on his debut in a maiden hurdle. That one worked out all right. And then he won handicaps off 125 and 135 before he's running the Albert Bartlett. The latter of those looks quite good form now, as he beat Build Me Up Buttercup, who was running off 128, is now rated 145. So that form looks quite good, and over 2 miles. I think he's probably best over an intermediate trip. But it was interesting that at the start of the season, Willie Mullins was quite hopeful for his novice chase campaign, saying he might even be smart enough to go down the ROCCO route. That was in his Racing Post start of season stable tour. So that was interesting. And he did make a really encouraging start over fences, winning what is traditionally a very good novice chase. I mean, it's been run by the likes of Road to Riches, Discorama, and Tornado Flyer recently. And the form has worked out very, very well. The 2nd, 3rd, and 4th all won quite easily since. The 6th won, and the 5th and 7th have gone close in decent races since. And he was 3rd in the Grade 1 for Heen novice chase behind Colreevy and Pencil Full of Lead. But his jumping was quite poor that day, much worse than it had been on his debut. And he did well to even get as close as he was at one stage. He shaped quite nicely, but even worse mistakes, the second last and the final fence kind of just put him with no chance of competing. I think he finished about 16 lengths down. And we last saw him out in the Flogas, where he was running a good race, but then he came down with 4 to go, I think. So the race hadn't fully developed. There was no way he was beating Monkfish, but he was still shaping quite nicely. And obviously with that fall, I think he was scratched today from the Arkle and the Marsh. So I think they're shelving those plans. And I think it'd be wise now, considering that, to send him back over hurdles, especially as he's completely exposed in that sphere. And when I was looking at him, I did actually think that horses returning from fences had a decent record in the Coral Cup. So I did a bit of research on this, and looking at the last 5 renewals, there were plenty of horses that came from fences that season to run really, really well in the Coral Cup. So Cracking Smart was 4th in 2020. Ballyandy placed in 2019. Top of the Game, William Henry placed in 2018. And in 2017, you had Takan de Soy and Monksland also in the places. And 2016, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th all had runs over fences prior in the season. So it's really interesting that from quite a small representation, you have quite a lot of former chasers that year running well in this race. And it's my theory that because the Coral Cup is quite a good handicap, you get quite a lot of classy horses who are perhaps thought to be graded level over fences. Perhaps things don't quite go well enough for them. They drop them back over hurdles, but they're still quite well handicapped in that sphere. And I think that could be the case with Janidil. Like, he's had a BHA mark 149. That's what he was allocated before running in the Albert Bartlett. And he's got an Irish chase rating of 148 at the moment. But given that he hasn't run over hurdles since the Albert Bartlett, I think he'll probably get around the same mark over hurdles of 149. I'd say that's probably what he ran to in the Albert Bartlett, really, given he was about 12 lengths behind the leading quartet. And if you look at the marks of those in the top 4 of the last 5 renewals of the Coral Cup, 14 of the 20 fell within 144 to 153. So you get those classy types towards the head of the weights doing quite well in this race. And this is a race that JP's won 3 times, 7 more have hit the frame. Willie Mullins trained the winner recently. And this race has been getting a lot more attention from Irish runners recently. And I still think that Janidil could be better than Mark 149. I don't think he's quite up to grade 1 standard, but I think he's a really decent horse. And if he comes back over this intermediate trip over hurdles, I think he'd have a really, really good chance in this.
Just to bring back to the point you were just making, do you think this is where like a novice hurdler, they go chasing, obviously they have big plans for that, but because they're a novice, their hurdling mark doesn't get as inflated? For instance, like Monkfish and Time Hill, they were both rated around 155, I think, or somewhere around that over hurdles, and now they've gone chasing. Well, now Monkfish's gone chasing, he's 160, and Time Hill's now 160. So what your sort of plan is to take a novice hurdler who goes chasing and comes back and has that low mark. That's the sort of technique you're picking for this race. Is that right?
In a way, yeah. I mean, I love the horse as it is, but I think he doesn't look like a horse who should be capped by Mark 149, in my opinion. He's still very lightly raced in that sphere, and obviously he's raced 3 races of his last 4 being grade 1s. So I clearly think something of him. And the fact he's on 149, or that was his BHA mark, I think that underestimates him. And you can see that. I mean, obviously, if these horses come back from chasing and they've only had about 3-4 runs over hurdles, it can leave them well in. And it's clearly been a method that's worked quite well in this race so far. That I think 9 of the last of the top 4 finishes in the last 5 renewals, more than half had been chasing that season. That's not a coincidence in my mind.
Very good. I'm glad you got a Willie Mullins horse on the board as well, because, obviously he targets the Cheltenham Festival like a lot of trainers and does very well, and JP McManus as well. Another tried and tested method to picking Cheltenham winners, as you can tell by my fantastic book of bears. All right, so my selection, we're obviously 4 weeks away from the festival now, and basically why I made the selection I did last week is I'm trying to get the horses I really want on side, whatever price they are. I want them in my book, and that's why I'm going to be going for one at a bit of a shorter price again. But I think he's got a really good chance. I don't think he's going to be much shorter than this on the day, because I think the field almost speaks for itself at this point. But it's going to be Paisley Park in the Stayers Hurdle. I'm just going to try and make the case that he can extend the distance between him and Time Hill, the main market rival he's got. So he was obviously a little bit below form last year before bombing out at the festival due to a heart issue. Now he's come back this year, and I'd actually say he's as good as he ever was. He was giving £3 to Time Hill on that first day at Newbury, and the race really wasn't run to suit. They went a slow gallop throughout, and that would have played into Time Hill's strengths, because I do believe that Time Hill is a speedier horse than Paisley Park. Now Paisley Park went to Ascot. They went off levels that day, and despite Aidan Coleman's best efforts, Paisley Park still managed to win. And to me, it was one of those races that if Time Hill was again going to beat Paisley Park, he would have done it that day. Paisley Park had no right to win the race. So what I'm trying to get out there is, I imagine that Aidan Coleman's going to learn from his lessons. It's a big occasion, and I think Paisley Park will be able to extend a little bit further, not be so far back. Looking at other horses in the field as well, Sire de Burles is one I would sort of be a bit worried about. I don't think the races he's contested this year have played into his strengths. He ran over 2.5 miles, and then he ran in that race at Leopardstown where Flooring Porter went a slow gallop. I think he's going to be really suited to the race. But I do think he's a little bit below these British runners. But I would expect a better performance. If he was an each-trade price, he could be something to play with there. There's all sorts of rumours surrounding Benny Desdeaux at the moment, whether she's out for the season. Some people go into the absolute extreme, saying we'll never see her again. But yeah, obviously one that we don't know where we stand. And then you've got Roxana, who again is another one who could go to the mares. I was reading an article today about from Dan Skelton, basically saying that the ground completely depends on where the source goes. If it's soft ground, they'll be looking to most probably towards the mares hurdle, and if it's a little bit quicker, they must probably go for the Stayers hurdle. So I think Paisley Park has the measure of Time Hill. I can't see anything else below, and I think he's back to his best. He's currently around 10-3. I'll take 10-3. That's going to be my selection, and I think they're only going to get shorter from here as well.
I say we've basically run out of original picks now, and we're just kind of going with your old favourites. Are we at this stage? Epatante last week, Paisley Park next. Are you going to have what? I can't even think. Who else is for short? We're going to do Concertista, maybe Mares Hurdle next.
Keep that to yourself.
Oh,
No, don't tell. I want to pick the horses that aren't completely short odds. Like I'm not going to stick up En Violin or anyone like that, or Monkfish. These are still fairly. These are still all right prices in my opinion. It's 10 to 3, and let's say Benny Does Do comes out the race, and let's say Roxana comes out the race. You must be looking at about a 9 to 4 shot on the day, maybe 2 to 1. I think Paisley Park's going to win the Stayers. I remember tweeting out after the Newbury win and saying, "You've seen the Stayers hurdle winner there, and it wasn't the winner. Take the 6 to 1 on Paisley Park." And I had a little go on in there, so it's half the price now. But that's obviously me after timing. I'm happy to take the 10 to 3 still. A confident selection. The thing is, although they're getting short, I'm very confident in these, and I'm very hopeful that you've got some big prices that are going to bomb out, and I can sneak in with a nice little 3 to 1 winner and a 5 to 2 winner, and just
even if they bomb out, at least like to think I'm giving value in terms of thinking, independently and not just going on odds checker, seeing who's favourite for this race. Oh yeah, he's all right. Yeah, put him up next week. At least I think I'd add a bit of value, and you're just saying, oh yeah, this horse who bombed out last year and probably isn't as good as he was in his peak. He's going to win the Stayers Hurdle again, despite it being a good renewal. And Fury Road wins the Stayers anyway, because we've already been over this. So unfortunately, mate, I think you're out of luck with that one.
Don't make me feel bad about my selections. I'm just trying to save myself 50 quid.
It's just competition. It's my job to make you feel bad about your selections. All this mind games, mate. You're going to come out next week with 100 to 1 poke, who probably has 100 to 1 chance of even turning up. I'm so deep in your head. I'm living there absolute rent-free, and I love it.
Oh, we'll see, mate. As I said earlier on in this episode, I'm going to be the one talking at the end of this podcast, mate. That's the main thing. All right, that's going to wrap up another week of the Cheltenham Festival head-to-head series. If you are enjoying it, please do smash the like button. Thank you very much for the support. They absolutely smashed the numbers last week. That was huge. I guess we're getting closer to Cheltenham Festival and people are searching for it. I didn't slate anyone too hard this week, so they'll keep the viewers on side. Anyway, that is going to wrap up this week, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode.